What's up, everybody? Andrew Mahone here with Tricky Jim at Full Grip Games. Today, I'm going to be reviewing Tord Reklev's top 4 Reshiram and Charizard deck from the World Championships, definitely asserting itself as one of the top decks in standard format. We're going to take a look at the list and see exactly why it is so good. We got 4 copies of Jirachi from Team Up to start things off. Definitely one of the most sought after cards in standard format right now, getting harder and harder to find a play set of these. 4 copies in the deck. Stellar Wish, a phenomenal ability for boosting the consistency of this deck. We got 2 Reshiram and Charizard-GX, and I've got that new promo artwork from the Reshiram and Charizard box in my list. Definitely a very cool artwork. 1 Heatran-GX, 3 Dedenne-GX, 1 Turtonator, 1 Victini, and a 2/2 Ninetales from Team Up line. And that's it for the Pokemon. Just 2 Reshiram and Charizard GX, and then a Heatran to round out the GX Pokemon attackers. Reshiram and Charizard GX, famously capable of dealing 230 damage with its Flare Strike, and then with 6 energy, Double Blaze GX taking out any tag team Pokemon in the format with 300 damage dealt. So Reshiram and Charizard is the bread and butter of this deck, but only 2 copies, which makes sense. If you get both Reshiram and Charizards knocked out, you lose. So really the rest of the deck is supposed to fill the gaps between the first Reshiram and Charizard and maybe the second. I mean, in this deck, you really may only attack with 1 Reshiram and Charizard GX, which is one of the coolest things about this list, is all of the other options that we have to attack with. Heatran-GX was definitely underrated going into the World Championships. I remember pulling this Rainbow Rare Heatran out of my Unified Minds pack and not being excited about it before the World Championships. I was like, wow, a Heatran, great, that thing will never be playable. Sure enough, there were like 3 copies of Heatran-GX or something like that in the top 4 decks, 1 in Tord's and 2 in Shintaro Ito's deck. So Heatran-GX quickly proving itself to be an all-star, fantastic for that hot burn GX attack, which can knock out any tag team Pokemon if it's got enough energy on it. Hot Burn GX does 50 damage times the amount of energy attached to Heatran, and then the Burning Road ability is great as well. Since we play Jirachi in this deck with Escape Board and Switch, there are a bunch of opportunities to switch energy off a damaged Reshiram and Charizard and onto a fresh Heatran-GX, which is sporting a great 190 hit points as well. A tougher Pokemon GX to knock out and only worth 2 prizes, which is awesome. This deck is very good at manipulating your opponent's prize track. Reshiram and Charizard obviously worth 3 prizes, but you don't need to set out both Reshiram and Charizards at the same time. You can charge forth with a quick Reshiram and Charizard, then your opponent might knock out a Jirachi, they might knock out a Turtonator, and then they might finally have to knock out a Heatran-GX or a final Reshiram Charizard, something like that. You can really play the prize game very well, forcing your opponent into awkward prize situations, and Heatran-GX does help with that. Burning Road, just fantastic for taking energy off of a damaged Charizard and onto this fresh attacker. One of the coolest things about this deck is these non-GX options, Victini and Turtonator. Victini Prism Star is actually the only fire energy recovery in this deck, with its infinity attack dealing 20 damage times the amount of fire energy you have in your discard pile, and you shuffle them all back into the deck. Costing just 2 fire energy means that it's easy enough to power up with Welder, and since this deck does play 18 fire energy, Victini Prism Star is always going to have plenty of energy to work with in the discard pile. So Infinity can deal huge numbers as a non-GX, which is awesome because you're usually going to charge in with the Reshiram and Charizard. Then once that gets knocked out, the fire energy are in the discard pile, you throw them back in with Infinity, continue using Welder onto other things, and by then you've usually wrapped up the game. Speaking about getting fire energy into the discard pile, Ninetales is something that helps us do that while also acting as the gust option for this deck. 9 Temptations reads, once during your turn before you attack, you may discard 2 fire energy from your hand. If you do, switch one of your opponent's bench Pokemon with their active Pokemon. So a great gusting effect for this deck. A 2-2 line means that we're going to be getting the Ninetales into play very consistently. Also, this deck playing a decent chunk of Pokemon makes very good use of Pokemon Communication as well. So Pokemon Communication, awesome for setting up the Ninetales, also great for trading maybe the Ninetales back into the deck before a day-to-day change, and then we'll draw into it when we need to set it up. 9 Temptations is fantastic for allowing Reshiram and Charizard to target down exactly who it wants to target down on its key turns where it's using Flare Strike. And then Turtonator with Explosive Jet, valuable for a number of reasons, not just because it's a non-GX who can knock out any Pokemon in standard format, but also because it is a dragon type, and if you happen to be against a Pokemon like Bronzong that prevents damage dealt to it from fire Pokemon, you can always get in there with Turtonator and take some knockouts that way. Explosive Jet, also just great for finishing things off, for promoting a non-GX Pokemon where maybe your opponent only has 3 prizes remaining. You could take a big knockout with Turtonator and then follow it up with an Infinity, a 1-2 punch, and then finish out the rest of the game that way. Turtonator and Victini definitely combo well together, since Turtonator discards energy and Infinity does more damage for the amount of energy in your discard pile. 3 Dedenne-GX means we're going to be drawing very aggressively through our deck, which is definitely the intention of this list. Jirachi Stellar Wish can find any trainer card we want off of the top 5 cards of our deck, and then Dedenne makes sure that we're powering through our deck, getting to the resources we need when we need them, and most crucially, finding one of our 4 supporter cards. That's right, you heard me right. 4 Welder. That is it for the supporters in this deck. Finding the Welders is often the biggest challenge of playing this list. That's the supporter line right there. 4 Welders. We do play 1 Pal Pad to help put the Welders back into the deck, maybe if we had to day-to-day change away too many Welders. But with 18 fire energy in the deck, Welder is almost always a live supporter card, drawing 3 cards when you attach 2 fire energy from your hand to one of your Pokemon. Fantastic card, definitely one of the most busted cards from the World Championships. Welder was in a ton of decks, and this deck is built to utilize Welder to the fullest. I mean, often you're just going to Welder a few times throughout the course of the game, attack with Reshiram and Charizard, maybe switch on to Heatran, maybe finish it up with Victini Prism Star. You only really need to Welder a few times in order to beat most tag team Pokemon GX decks or regular GX decks. We do have some non-GX options to deal with non-GX decks, but this deck definitely wants to be facing off against tag team decks. Since we only have 4 Welder, there is no Volcanion from Unbroken Bonds in this deck to accelerate energy. That way, Welder is the only way to accelerate energy, and this deck is built to find these Welders and get fire energy into play that way. We do also have 4 copies of Cherish Ball, which is great in a deck that focuses on Dedenne-GX and using Dedenne-GX to draw. Also awesome since we only play 2 Reshiram and Charizard, and you're going to want to find Reshiram and Charizard early to get your Welder energy onto it. 3 Pokemon Communication and 3 Acro Bike. Also 3 Super Scoop Up, 2 Escape Board, 2 Switch, and a Pal Pad. As far as the stadiums go, we've got 3 copies of Giant Hearth and 1 Heat Factory. So a very consistent deck. You could tell there's really no frills here, except for maybe those 3 copies of Super Scoop Ups, which I have heard positive and negative things about. I personally think they're really cool. Not only do they allow you to pick up your Dedenne-GX and continue drawing, they also can allow you to pick up a Reshiram and Charizard after you have used Heatran-GX and that Burning Road ability to take all of your energy off of a Reshiram Charizard. So I really like that kind of shake and bake strategy there. You move the Heatran in, you clean up the Charizard with Super Scoop Up. I think that's really cool. And then in a pinch, Super Scoop Up also works as a switch card to help get your Jirachi out of the active position. So a really cool, versatile card. I think Super Scoop Up is neat. It gives the deck healing. It gives it switch options. Definitely a cool card to have, and I'm a big fan of 3 Super Scoop Ups in the deck. Pokemon Communication, like I said, works great. We have a ton of Pokemon in the deck, and you really want an option to help set up your Ninetales. 3 Acro Bike just gives us a little bit of extra dig, just in case we haven't found the Welder yet, or we're looking for a Fire Energy or something like that. Any card that we want to find, we might just find it with Acro Bike, giving you that extra dig throughout your turn. Giant Hearth is great in combo with Welder because Giant Hearth just gets you those 2 fire energy out of your deck and into your hand so that you can use Welder to accelerate those energies into play. Playing 3 Giant Hearth is fantastic. I mean, we would play 4 if Heat Factory wasn't just so completely insane that you need to play that card because it's just that good. Discarding a fire energy and drawing 3 cards, great. Gotta play Heat Factory, so we play 3 copies of Giant Hearth. Also awesome for getting the fire energy out of your deck so that you can use Ninetales 9 Temptations ability as a gust effect too. Pal Pad, like I said, recovers those precious welders that we have. Switch, awesome for not only Jirachi, but for Heatran-GX to use its ability also. And then Escape Boards go great on Jirachis too. A lot of times when you have a Reshiram Charizard in the active, you may want to just use Switch into an Escape Boarded Jirachi to get another Stellar Wish use throughout the turn. So definitely like those as switch options. I've heard some players may be wanting to trade a Super Scoop Up for other copies of Switch, but I, like I said, like the Super Scoop Ups because of the versatility of that card in this specific list. And then moving on to the energy, this deck plays a whopping 18 fire energy. I mean, it's just a ton of energy and no energy recovery, which is pretty wild. We don't have any fire crystals in this deck, just 18 fire energy. Obviously was successful for Tord at the World Championships, and I look forward to seeing what decks he comes up with next. That just about does it for our deck profile of Tord's top 4 Reshiram and Charizard list. Thank you all so much for watching the video. Make sure to like the video, sub to the channel, ring that bell. Check me out on Twitch, where you can watch me live stream every single weekday, twitch.tv/TrickyJim. And then, of course, FullGripGames.com for all your trading card game needs. Thank you guys so much for watching the video. Have a great day. Peace.